Ryan here from Venture, hosting the Young Entrepreneurs Week all this week for Property Tribes. Today I'm joined by Rajan. So Rajan, what attracted you to property?
So there's a few things, there's a combination of things that attracted me to property. I first started getting involved in property when I was at university.
Yeah.
So number one was the capability to earn a lot of money from property, and it was the way in which you could earn money from property. So the idea behind residual income, and the payloads that come with that was what really started it off for me. But then it was things like the lifestyle attached to property, the scope for development, and just the amount of scope that there was for growth as well. Starting from so young and having a career that could span the next 10, 20 years, that was what started off for me, and that's why I started.
Mm-hmm. Oh, good.
Yeah.
So when you started at university, do you think that was an advantage to actually being into property and being young and having time while being at university?
I think there were, it's sort of the sweet with the sour, if you will.
Yeah.
There were definitely advantages to it. Being so young, you can plan your time a bit more effectively. You've got a lot more time to put things in place, and you don't have that pressure of you need to get things done by a certain time because you're starting off so young.
Yeah.
But at the same time, being that young, being in university, you've got no real experience with what property is, the property world, property investment. So that was sort of a disadvantage, if you would.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the rough with the smooth.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, definitely.
Did anybody say or do anything that sort of stopped you or put a dampener on it when you was at university? Because obviously you was a lot younger than you was trying to get into a industry or a investment sort of angle that's pretty tough.
I mean, I wouldn't say anyone really put a damper on it. There's always a naysayer.
Mm-hmm.
There's always people who say, "Oh, you're a bit young," or "You don't really know." I think the worst case is when someone in the staff of the university said to me, "Oh, do you think you should focus a bit more on your studies here rather than the career back at home?" And I sort of smiled and nodded with them, and it was a valid point because I needed to get my degree. But I think that was the worst case. Other than that, I didn't really feel that I was hindered or made to feel that it was unachievable.
Mm-hmm.
So I was quite lucky in that respect.
Yeah.
So it was good.
Yeah. Sounds good. So was you away from where you are investing now when you was at university? Did you start with some investments or some deals in the university in which you went to?
So I live in Kent, but my family's all based in London.
Mm-hmm.
And so is my mentor, he's based in London as well.
Yeah.
And I went to university in Norwich.
Oh, wow.
So what we did, we started off within London,
Mm-hmm.
because it was an easy access for us. We were straight in with people who were well established in the business, and we travelled back and from. We came back for 2-hour networking events. You'd go back up the same night, and it's lectures the next morning. You come back the next day, but it was a good fun. It's a good story to tell looking back on it now. So we started in London, and we did look around in Norwich and the local area, but the amount of traction we just gained in London, it just seemed silly to diversify our time too much.
Yeah, I know from myself that I'm based in Lincoln and I do everything in Lincoln, and I know being younger and actually investing in an area that I've known and I've grown up has been a massive help for me because of that network. Do you agree?
Yeah, I completely agree. We knew, because where we invested was all East London.
Yeah.
So we knew East London I knew East London like the back of my hand.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a case of like getting the car, off you go, you know where you're going. Things like a place like Norwich where we were at university, it's still a university town to you.
Yeah.
So you don't know the ins and outs, the good bits, the bad bits, where's the hot investment area. Whereas, a place like East London, we just knew it. So I completely agree with you. If you know an area, just stick with that area because you'll be so much safer.
So with that in mind then, what was your first deal look like? So take us from your very first deal to where you are now.
So I started off doing property sourcing. So we sourced off-plan developments. We were selling them on to major investors who are really established in the business and building these tower blocks of flats and these houses that were going for sale, and it was brilliant. And that's where we started. We started off with one major deal in East London. It was in Plaistow, and it was an old print factory, and it had planning permission to be converted into houses and flats, etc., etc. And that was our first major deal. That was the first one that went through. We had a pub in Stratford, that was nice. That went through quite quickly, quite swiftly. We had a prime London development in Mayfair. That one unfortunately didn't go through, but that was my biggest exposure to something proper luxury and really, really well developed in such a high demand area as Mayfair. That was incredible to see that go from where it was to where it is now, which is actually sold. So that was fantastic when we got to that. Now I've been able to branch out and open my own business, so I'm in rent to rent now. So going from developments to rent was a complete change of strategy, but for me, where I was in my personal journey, it was the right thing to do. Especially when I moved back from university as well, I had so much more time on my hands. So yeah, so that's where I started, and that's where I am now.
Pretty exciting journey, that.
Yeah, it was a proper roller coaster is how I describe it. There were because it opened us up to so many people who we just wouldn't normally be able to network with, or have nothing of value to add to that conversation. So starting off with those kinds of events, me and my business partner at the time, we made such a name for ourselves very quickly. Being so young, we stood out with these £1 million developments.
Now they all want to talk to you.
Yeah, and everyone was our mates, and they're queuing up to chat to you and take your business card, and it was a great rush at the time. I remember having a lot of fun going to those networking events. But yeah, going from that to going to rent, it's a completely different world. But like I said, for me at that time, it was perfect.
Where do you see the future for you and your business then going forward? What's the main aim, goal? Where do you want it to be?
Yeah, I mean, the rent-to-rent business is continuing to grow, which we're very happy about. You know, we look to expand, take on more staff and things like that, and expand the business. The idea is that we're creating, you know, being a student, what we were finding is that how many landlords were charging extortionate fees for their services, and what the conditions of the rooms were, and what we're missing, that as a student or as a young professional you'd think we'd want these things in there. So that was my scope on it. So that's where I'm able to market differently. I sort of have a better understanding of what people like me, my own demographic, are looking for. So we look to continue that. I look to re-enter the development world, and make that a sustainable business too in the next 3 to 5 years. And start developing that side as well, and obviously creating these great apartments and these well-facilitated apartments in well-connected areas to suit the client base that we have.
Sounds exciting. I'm sure you'll get there. Did you say you had a mentor?
I do have a mentor, yes.
I personally have one as well. My business partner is a lot older than me, and he is effectively my mentor. And I know that has been, for me, that has opened so many doors. I wouldn't be where I am today without my mentor. And it's just interesting to see whether other young people have got mentors and how their relationships work. Yeah,
I mean, I have, you know, my entire family have been so supportive. Coming up from university, I didn't go to get a job. I went straight into property, and so supportive. So all of them have, you know, contributed to my journey. You know, I've got, like I said, I've got my mentor, my property mentor. I've got business mentors, and obviously my family's supporting me. So all of them combined is definitely, it's so key. It's just there's no way I'd be anywhere close to without that support. It's not even just the emotional support, but the knowledge that they bring to the table, the contacts they have, you know, their knowledge of the industry where they're so many years ahead. It's leveraged, isn't it? You use their experience and their contacts to, you know, further what you're trying to do. And it's so key. I couldn't agree more. You know, it's so important.
So do you have a top tip for any young business people, any young property entrepreneurs wanting to get into the business or to do a business of their own?
My top tip for any young entrepreneur, I think it's in any business, but it's definitely helped me in property, is just going back to mentors. It's so key. You know, the people they open up to, you know, the money that they can give you access to, because you're going to need money to grow your business. You're going to need investors on board, and they will have that. The support and the knowledge that they bring. So, like my property mentor brought so much knowledge about contracts, legal understanding, with basic things like deposits. You've got to know what paperwork and where it needs to be filed and things like that. And you know, they know how to deal with certain situations. You know, tenants will bring up certain issues that you just need to be able to deal with. And if you've not dealt with that before, having someone who has makes it so much more stress-free.
So what's the biggest challenge that you faced, and how have you personally dealt with that?
So the biggest challenge I faced, you know, I think there's three. I'll go over them just very, very quickly. I think the first thing is credibility. I think it's so difficult as a young entrepreneur and a young entrepreneur in property to be able to prove that actually I know what I'm talking about. I have legal understanding of the strategy I'm taking on, and I think that's so hard to prove when you're starting out. The way I got over that was I aligned myself with the right people. I made sure that I did know what I was talking about, and I was always able to back up what I was saying. So that was definitely the first thing. You know, we've touched on experience. You need to be able to leverage other people and use their experience to help you. So you know what pitfalls to miss out on and what you're looking to achieve. If you can see what you're trying to achieve, it's a lot easier to attain. I'm a firm believer of that. And money, having that access to the cash.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that you need access to hundreds and thousands, but just little things like being able to get to the right networking events, knowing how to spend your money, knowing not to waste your money as well. And again, it comes down to having the right people around you to say, right, this is what you should be aiming for and this is what you should be trying to avoid. But those three challenges were definitely the challenges that I faced very early on, and fortunately enough I've got through them. So.
I think you're going to be a very successful young man.
Thank you.
You've definitely headed the right way.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us on Young Property Entrepreneurs Week, all this week on Property Tribes.